Hi, everybody. We have a moral crisis in this country. I want to start with a quote of Franklin Roosevelt from his second inaugural address in 1937. He said, quote, "The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much. It is whether we provide enough for those who have too little." You can hardly even imagine a president, even if he felt that way today, actually saying it. We live in an age where there's not only this obscene glorification and exaltation of the obscenely wealthy, but even more dangerously, there's this demonization of the poor. That has taken hold of our national consciousness and is codified by the policies of this administration. I'm reminded also, of course, of the New Colossus, the brilliant poem by Emma Lazarus on the Statue of Liberty, where she said, "Give me your tired, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." Well, obviously, we may as well just get rid of that poem because we don't mean it anymore in terms of immigrants trying to come to the United States, as so many of our own parents and grandparents and great-grandparents did, but also with what's happening now. We're seeing the same kind of cruel treatment, not only against immigrants, but against people here in the United States. I heard an interview the other day with Margaret Atwood, and she said apparently the United States has decided it doesn't need its poor. So we have now gotten to the point where we have a president who basically is leading the charge against what he considers and what people like him consider throwaway people. I live in Washington, D.C. We're seeing what's happening not only with the soldiers who are here, as we've been talking about, we have a 30-year low in crime in Washington, D.C. So that's not what's really going on. This has to do with the militarization of the streets of the United States, not just Washington, but also the behavior towards the poor, really the criminalization of homelessness in the United States. So I'm always on the lookout for people who know what they're talking about these things. The other day, I saw an Instagram posting by Jesse Rabinowitz. He is a National Homelessness Law Center's Campaign and Communications Director. He has spoken across the country on topics such as advocacy to end homelessness, the connection between white supremacy and anti-Semitism, and how to build local budget campaigns. Jesse, first of all, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
There were a couple things you said that I want to start with. First of all, the couple of lines you said, and I went right on. You said locking up people you don't like or that you don't want to see is textbook authoritarianism. And you also said his targeting of homeless folks in D.C., that population is over 85% black. You said that's intentional. Trump's path makes housing more expensive, makes more people homeless, then locks people up for living in a country with no affordable housing. So I want to talk about the authoritarianism here. I also want to talk about something else you touched there, and that is that a lot of people are saying, well, we do have this homelessness problem. What are we supposed to do about it? Well, you and I, and certainly most of our listeners would agree, well, we're not supposed to just get rid of them. He says he's giving them, this is such a problem I have, not only with the immigrants, but with homeless and so forth. Where are these people going? They're essentially being disappeared. So over to you. What's going on in Washington? How do you see this as part of a larger agenda of the Trump administration? What should we be doing about homelessness, and how are we going to stop all this?
Those are great questions. I want to back up and say that none of this is surprising. None of this is surprising. Donald Trump, during his campaign, talked openly about rounding up homeless people and forcing them into government-run detention camps. Last year, there was a Supreme Court ruling, the Johnson versus Grants Pass case, which said that cities can arrest people or give people tickets for sleeping outside when they have nowhere else to go. And since that ruling, over 260 cities have passed laws that make it illegal to be homeless. There is a far right-wing billionaire-backed think tank out of Texas called the Cicero Institute, which has been peddling racist cookie-cutter laws aimed at making it a crime to be homeless across the country, and they now have the ear of the Trump administration. We are seeing these billionaires that are so out of touch that they actually think that homelessness is a choice, that they actually think people are choosing to live outside, and we know nothing could be further from the truth. The average cost of a one-bedroom in DC is $2,300 a month. Most people can't afford that. When rent goes up, homelessness goes up. And that's why we see people sleeping outside in DC and sleeping outside across the country. We should not be surprised by this. And as Donald Trump said, what starts in DC will spread to the rest of the country. He specifically called out that he was going to export his scorched earth homeless policies to Chicago, to New York, to Baltimore, to LA and Oakland. Notably, those are all cities with black mayors. This is part of his white supremacist authoritarian agenda. None of this helps anybody. I was there on Thursday night when over 30 federal agents surrounded a homeless encampment in Foggy Bottom. And I was there on Friday when people had their possessions and tents and belongings thrown away. That doesn't get anybody housing. That doesn't get anybody help. And the fact that the most powerful person in the world is using his position to throw away homeless people's belongings is just shameful. That's not leadership. That's just being a bully.
You know, when you said repeatedly that none of this is surprising, there are two issues here. Number one, it's not surprising because throughout his campaign, as you said, he talked about things like mass deportations. He talked about things like getting rid of homelessness, the way you said. But also, it's not surprising given the accumulation of $50 trillion in the hands of the top 1% that had not existed there before over the last 50 years. So much of this is a consequence of the particular strain of amoral capitalism that gave rise to all this, right? What do we do now? What do we do now? How do we change any of this? First of all, how do we change our economic system so that more people could get into the system and definitely into housing? But also, how do we stop this authoritarian, I think really at this point bordering on totalitarianism wave of governmental policy that's upon us now?
Absolutely. We need to treat housing as a need, something that everybody needs, just like food and oxygen, instead of treating housing like a tool for people to accumulate wealth. Everybody needs a safe place to live. That is true in DC, that is true across the country. But at this moment in time, half of renters struggle to pay rent. 1 in 4 people worry about imminently becoming homeless, and 1 in 5 people spend all of their income on rent. That is not a housing program. That is not a housing platform that works. It is not sustainable. It will not last. We need to reimagine housing in this country and ensure that everybody, regardless of where they're from, what they look like, who they love, what they do, has a safe place to live. Because we know that if we actually care about safe communities, we need to get folks housed, and we need to get folks the resources they need to thrive. What do we do next is a good question. We know that Donald Trump is planning to export these anti-homelessness policies across the country, and that might include using the federal government and federal police to make it a crime to be homeless. We need people to support Congresspersons Jayapal and Frost's Housing Not Handcuffs Act. This act was introduced recently and prevents the federal government from making it a crime to be homeless. If this were in place in DC, we would not see federal agents harassing people experiencing homelessness. We also need this law to be passed at the state and local level to ensure that nobody is thrown in jail or given a ticket for sleeping outside in a country where nobody is thrown in jail and where nobody is thrown in jail and when nobody is given a ticket for sleeping outside in a country where housing is just too expensive.
So you said that Pramila Jayapal and Maxwell Frost, two congresspeople, they have already submitted a bill. And this would be called, what'd you say, Housing Not Handcuffs? So everybody, you can call Congress, call your congressperson, and definitely make a call. Definitely.
Oh, we've made it easy for folks at the housingnothandcuffs.org, and we have their emails ready to go, so you can shoot them an email and share on social. We really need this act to pass right now.
Okay. housingnothandcuffs.org. housingnothandcuffs.org, and we'll write that down below. But also, even though Jesse said that they have emails ready to go, write in your own words. You know, the thing that particularly gets to me every time. First of all, there are around, 700,000 to 800,000 homeless people in the United States, Jesse? And a high number of those are actually people who work full time. Correct?
Definitely. People across the country are working and can't make ends meet.
Right. And they have their children with them in many cases, correct?
Sometimes.
So everybody, when you're talking about just getting rid of their belongings, think what that means and think what it would mean to you to be living in a tent, the little that you have. I mean, the personal trauma of this, the personal trauma of this. So don't hesitate to write in your own words your feelings, how you feel about this, because I think that really makes a difference when individual congresspeople read those things. And also, in addition to sending the email, please call. Say this is a constituent call, because don't think it doesn't make a difference, because the congressperson will hear at the end of the day how many calls you got about this, and it actually does make a difference. If you're in a Democratic district, you say, well, my Democratic congressperson already would be for this. You can't be sure of that. And even if they're for it, you want them to be vocally in support of it, because they're having to decide what to concentrate on and what to focus on. And obviously, if it's a Republican, you need to do that. So we've got that bill. That was the first thing you said, to pass that bill, to try to pass that bill. I'm sure there will be extraordinary Republican resistance to passing the bill, but anytime we can get there's still a razor thin majority that they have. So there's hope in the air, and I think a lot of people are at least feeling the public pressure, because this is normalized cruelty that we are talking about here. Jesse, tell me where these people are going. The people who've been rounded up in Washington, where do you think they've gone? Do we have any idea?
It's a good question. I'm getting that question 10, 15 times a day, and I don't have an answer. Right now, DC has expanded shelter access for folks, which is good, and that is a good thing. But DC taxpayers are paying for it. Donald Trump is not paying for it. So again, the DC taxpayers are footing the bill for his racist photo ops. That's not sustainable. And we know a lot of people don't find that shelter meets their needs. We don't know where people are going. And that's just one of the many reasons why evicting encampments makes homelessness worse. It disconnects people from their communities, but also their case managers can't find them to offer them support. It doesn't work. It only leaves people less safe.
Well, also, people go into these shelters and they're not invited to stay there forever. It's just a temporary situation. And then they're going to be back on the streets. So basically what we've got are all these, I'm sorry, go on.
I was going to say, and shelters are not a long-term solution to homelessness. The long-term solution to homelessness in DC and across the country is getting folks housing and support. But the Republicans just passed a budget that guts funding for healthcare support, and Donald Trump is pushing for a budget that will make more people homeless. They're not interested in helping people. They are interested in demonizing homeless folks in DC who are overwhelmingly black to score points, to score political points and stoke their base.
So everybody, what's happening here, of course, is that we've got people dealing with the symptom. And this symptom was an inevitable and natural consequence of the way our economic system has been working over the last few decades. As I say often, the Republicans started this trickle-down nonsense in which all these resources were just sucked into the hands of a tiny few, but no Democrat stopped it. And every time we have these conversations, we have to keep our attention on what's going to happen at the end of this catastrophic chapter. Because at the end of this catastrophic chapter, we've got to do more than just these incremental approaches. Even when Jesse keeps saying we need to deal with housing, what we need to deal with is the fact that too many people can't get into the system. America is a place where if you're in the game, this is a great place. Too many people can't get into the game. And too many people, millions of American children can't get into the game. So what are you going to do? You're either going to put them on the streets or you're going to put them in prison when they grow up, and their chances for high school graduation are so much less than their chances of incarceration. We've got to think about this in terms of the big system. And we've got to stop thinking about it as something that one of our political parties will handle. Surely they'll handle. Surely they're thinking about these things. No, they were not thinking about these things. As I keep saying, neoliberalism is no match for fascism. Everything that's happening here was somewhat inevitable and could have been predicted if we'd been thinking with our hearts. So right now, thank you that we have people like you, Jesse, who are dealing with the specific issues. Anything else that you can think of that we need to know? I love that you told us about, is there a particular number to that bill? You said, so everybody remember, it's housingnothandcuffs.org. What, is there a bill number yet?
There is, and I'm not remembering it. Let's see how fast.
Okay, that's okay. If you go to, I'm sure it's
HR
okay.
4182.
Okay. 4182 and become conversant with it. Read when you call your congressman's office or your congresswoman's office and you say, this is a constituent call, you'll give them your name, you'll give them your address, you'll say how strongly you believe about this. Be conversant in it. Be conversant. Say why you think it's wrong, why it's not the America that you want to see. Why I said before, if it's a Democrat, we want them. I appreciate their support, but we want them to be more vocal about it. And if it's a Republican, say, I promise you, I will do everything possible to make sure this person is not reelected if, in fact, they do not support this bill. Each and every one of us have to find our voice. You can't just leave it to nonprofits such as Jesse or to leave it to elected officials. Not today. Each and every one of us has to see ourselves as the leader, the leadership of citizenship itself. Anything else, Jesse?
A few different points to make. One is that we started by saying that the National Guard has been deployed to DC. The DC National Guard deployment costs about $450,000 a day. The cost to get someone into permanent housing with support for a year is about $45,000. So for every day that the DC National Guard is deployed, we could house 10 people for a year. This is not a resource issue. We have the money to solve homelessness.
Hold on. Say this again. How much is it costing the taxpayers to have these National Guard on the streets of Washington?
According to Robert Reich, it's about $450,000 a day for the DC National Guard to be deployed. And look, we know that National Guards from at least 3 other states are going to be deployed in DC. Why can we always find money for the military and police, but we can't find money to help people? Our priorities are backwards.
Well, that's why I said it's a moral crisis at this point. And there are many people making billions of dollars on these private prisons, on these detention camps, and all of these things. I mean, look that up online because all of that information is out there. And also, as Jesse and I have both been talking about, this is a show they plan to take on the road. The president has said that. This homelessness issue is part of the entire militarization issue. This is the deal, everybody. The Department of Homeland Security is basically a white nationalist army. This is a white nationalist agenda, and that's what I appreciate about your comments, Jesse, that I heard you make online. We really need to understand that this is a fascist playbook we're talking about here, and every code red alert that you can possibly imagine is already sounding. So get on it. Thank you, Jesse. Anything else you want to add?
Just to further this authoritarian nature, we know authoritarians take over the Capitol first. They target groups that have little public sympathy, like homeless folks, to test out their backwards racist policies. I want people to care about what's happening to homeless folks in DC because homeless folks are people and they deserve everything that everyone wants and needs. But if that doesn't sway people, rest assured that this isn't going to stop with homelessness. They're going to come for everyone who is not a white, Christian, straight, wealthy man in this country. We have to stand up right now and say no. We also know that textbook authoritarianism is using your power to clear out people you don't want to see from your direct line of sight. Donald Trump had the federal government evict homeless people along his routes to his golf course and to the Kennedy Center in advance of his trip to the Kennedy Center. This is not acceptable. That is an abuse of power. And if Donald Trump was actually interested in helping people, he would fund housing and support. But instead, he just wants to throw people in jail for being poor. That's shameful, but I do believe we can fight, and I do believe that we can win.
There are leaders. There are leaders in the political sphere. There are judges. There are all kinds of people, including the nonprofit organizations, people such as you yourself, Jesse, who are doing great work. But nothing is going to be an adequate response to the challenges of this time until and unless each and every one of us see ourselves as responsible. You've got to think about this in political terms as guerrilla warfare. Each and every one of us jump out from behind a tree, go to housing.handcuffs.org, make a phone call, write an email, tell your friends, spread this interview, look up Jesse's organization, and your organization is called?
The National Homelessness Law Center.
See every issue as your issue because this is the America. We've never been perfect, but we've never been this bad either. Okay, well, you could say slavery was, but I'm telling you something. What we're heading towards is institutionalized cruelty. Okay, everybody, you know what to do. Jesse, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.